Today, we're taking on Ernie El Vecchio's Big Tail Small Kite, Beyond Ego.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, this book goes deep. Vecchio uses this really cool metaphor of a kite. And trust me, it's going to make you think about shame and self-acceptance in a whole new light. What's fascinating about Vecchio's approach, wouldn't you say?
It's his ability to take complex emotions like shame and make them relatable. Right out of the gate, Vecchio paints this picture. We're born with this inherent potential to soar, to embrace life's fullness. That's the kite. But it's the tail, weighed down by shame, that often holds us back.
You're saying shame is like that heavy tail on the kite, preventing us from reaching our full potential.
Precisely. Vecchio argues we are all born into this world brimming with hope, with an inherent worthiness. He calls it a divine design. But shame disrupts that natural order.
He's saying we are meant to soar, but then life throws those curveballs. And it's not like anyone asks for a heavy tail. It made me think about those early messages we receive, the ones that can sometimes chip away at our sense of worth.
Absolutely. Vecchio points to the boundless energy and spirit of a child. Imagine that energy being stifled, dismissed, or even punished. It plants a seed of doubt. If I was created this way, am I the mistake?
Wow, that's a powerful way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like that doubt becomes the first thread of shame, weighing down the tail of our metaphorical kite. And speaking of powerful imagery, I have to ask about Vecchio's use of the ugly duckling. I was surprised to see a children's story woven into this, but it's actually brilliant.
It's genius how Vecchio elevates it beyond a simple children's story. He reminds you, just like the ugly duckling who eventually transforms into a swan, you too can shed those perceived flaws and embrace your true potential.
There's that transformation, that shedding of what we thought we were to uncover who we truly are. And that makes me think about how we see our physical selves. Vecchio compares our bodies to the kite itself.
It's fascinating. Vecchio highlights how our physical selves, like kites, are subject to external forces. Societal pressures, comparisons, judgments. These become the winds that buffet the kite, threatening to throw it off course. But here's the key. Just as a well-built kite can withstand those pressures, our bodies possess an inherent resilience.
We can weather those storms, those criticisms, because our value comes from within. And then there's the whole internal world, the emotional side of things. Vecchio introduces the emotional bridle, a tool for navigating the intense feelings that shame can trigger. What's your read on this?
Think of it this way. Your emotions are like the wind that can either lift your kite or send it into a tailspin. The emotional bridle is about harnessing those winds, not being controlled by them.
It's not about suppressing emotions, but about learning to work with them.
Exactly. Just as a bridle helps a rider guide a horse, the emotional bridle helps you stay grounded, focused, even when your emotions feel turbulent.
Now, before we go any further, I have to ask about this divine cloak Vecchio keeps mentioning. It sounds pretty profound. What's the deal with this cloak?
This is where Vecchio gets to the heart of our innate worth. He says we are all born with this divine cloak, a sense of inherent value that shields us from shame. But life throws those inevitable punches, those moments of rejection, criticism, maybe even abuse. And those experiences, they tear at that cloak, leaving us feeling vulnerable.
It's like those little holes that appear in your kite. They might start small, but if you ignore them, they can rip the whole thing apart. And I think that's what's so crucial about Vecchio's message here. He doesn't just leave us with a bunch of holes in our cloak. He actually gives us the tools to mend them.
Right? He does. He really does. Vecchio emphasizes the power of compassion, both for yourself and others. As the needle and thread to mend those tears in your divine cloak, it's about cultivating a lens of kindness and understanding toward yourself. That's where true healing begins.
So we're not just talking about patching up the holes, we're talking about fundamentally changing how we see ourselves.
Exactly. And Vecchio acknowledges this isn't always easy. He compares it to learning to forecast the weather.
Okay, now you've got to connect the dots for me on that one. How does forecasting the weather relate to healing from shame?
Just like a kite needs the right weather conditions to soar, your emotional well-being thrives in a healthy internal climate. Vecchio suggests that by learning to recognize the patterns in your emotional landscape, you can anticipate and navigate those emotional storms that might otherwise trigger shame.
So we're talking about identifying those early warning signs, those thoughts, those feelings, even those specific situations that tend to send us down a spiral of self-criticism.
Precisely. Instead of being caught off guard by those emotional downpours, you can use that awareness to make conscious choices, to adjust your course, and navigate those feelings more skillfully.
Vecchio provides some practical tools for this, doesn't he?
He does. He encourages you to pay attention to the nuances of your emotional responses. He even offers specific techniques for cultivating self-awareness and emotional regulation.
It's about recognizing that you have more agency than you might realize, right? Just at the mercy of your emotions. You can learn to work with them. Now, I want to loop back to this kite metaphor because I think it beautifully ties everything together. We've got the kite itself representing your true self, that inherent potential Vecchio talks about. Then we have the tail, all that shame and self-doubt that can weigh you down. And we've got the wind, those powerful emotions that we're learning to harness with the emotional bridle. And let's not forget that divine cloak, that sense of inherent worthiness that we can reclaim and repair through compassion. But there's one more crucial element in Vecchio's framework that I want to touch on. Letting go. How does that factor into this whole equation?
Letting go is huge. It's about recognizing that sometimes holding on too tightly to our fears, our past hurts, those limiting stories we tell ourselves, can actually prevent us from soaring to those higher altitudes.
It can be scary, that feeling of surrender, but it's often in those moments of letting go that the kite truly takes flight.
And Vecchio challenges you to consider, what if letting go of that tight grip on control is actually about trusting the natural flow of life? What if it's about surrendering to the wind and allowing it to guide you to unexpected heights?
That sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is surrender to the journey, even when it feels uncertain.
Exactly. And Vecchio reminds you, letting go isn't a one-time event. It's a practice, something you might find yourself doing over and over again in different areas of your life as you evolve and grow.
It makes you realize how much energy we expend trying to control the uncontrollable, right? It's that very grip that keeps us tethered to those old patterns of shame and self-doubt.
It's so true, and Vecchio reminds you that letting go isn't about giving up. It's about shifting your focus. It's about recognizing what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your responses, and releasing the need to control everything else.
It's about choosing to trust the process. Trust that even if things get a little bumpy, you have the inner strength and resilience to navigate those challenges. That's where true freedom lies, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's about having faith in your ability to adapt, to learn, to grow from whatever life throws your way. And sometimes that requires looking at yourself with fresh eyes. Which brings us to that final point Vecchio emphasizes, the power of seeing your own reflection clearly.
This resonates so much with me. It's like we can get so used to seeing ourselves through the distorted lens of shame that we forget to recognize the incredible, worthy person reflected back at us.
Vecchio uses the ugly duckling analogy again here. Remember, the duckling couldn't see its true swan-like beauty until it looked in the mirror with new eyes, free from those negative self-perceptions.
So how do we start to shift those perceptions?
Vecchio is a firm believer in the power of compassion, of extending the same kindness and understanding to ourselves that we would offer a dear friend. It's about becoming your own best advocate.
It's like replacing that harsh, judgmental inner voice with one that's encouraging, supportive, and celebratory of all that you are.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't about denying your imperfections. It's about recognizing that those imperfections are part of what makes you uniquely you.
Vecchio's message is so empowering. He's not just saying, hey, you're worthy. He's giving you the tools to actually believe it, to embody that worthiness in every aspect of your life.
And that's a continuous journey, isn't it?
So to our listeners out there, we'll leave you with this powerful question from Vecchio. Quote, what if the journey of healing shame is ultimately about embracing your whole self, imperfections and all?
Let those words sink in and remember this journey, like that kite soaring in the wind, is uniquely yours. Embrace the ups and downs, trust the process, and never stop exploring the incredible heights you are destined to reach.
Beautifully said. And on that note of hope and possibility, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Ernie L. Vecchio's Big Tail Small Kite, Beyond Ego. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Keep questioning, keep growing, and keep soaring.